Welcome, Red Eyes members. Welcome back. We are talking with Aelous Kephas. Thank you very much for joining us. We're having a very interesting conversation here about, I think, thoughts, basically, that many people will and I think should have as they're involved in a lot of this consuming of information, as it were. A lot of people are just, in a way, they're just making up for lost time, it seems like, and many people are so hungry for all this kind of esoteric, occult, conspiratorial information, and I think it's a very good thing at the end of the day, at least. And what people make of it is up to themselves, basically, at that point. But definitely there should be there's a responsibility in both ways, both those who disseminate and both those who receive the information, obviously. But I'm going to ask you a little bit more here, Aelous, of what you'll be doing in regards to when you're turning away from the web entirely. You're going to put down your blog then, or not update it, I guess. And the same thing with your podcast. Do you think it will be difficult to face that out? Will it still sneak peek, as it were, on the web, or are you going to try just throw away your computer and everything?
No, I won't be taking that drastic measures, Henrik. I'll just be exercising a little self-control. I'm definitely I've made it clear that I'm still open to private correspondences. It's not like I'm abandoning the field. It's really sort of going to more subtler kind of process, I think, and more inward, as I've mentioned. I also have to work on, well, I don't have to, but I'm going to be working on a new book about the military entertainment industry and that whole area, which is going to take up a lot of time. So, there were various just basic pragmatic reasons for this. Another being that I simply need to get a job. I can't make a living doing podcasts and blogging, unfortunately. And, it's... There's something to be said for the duties of maintaining one's physical being, whether it's ill health or financial instability or what have you. It definitely helps to keep us grounded.
Yeah, that's true. And we need to survive. We need to eat. We need to have a roof over our heads, and that's the rules of the current game on this planet, as we talked about before, and that's what the masters are doing in that sense, and that's the situation we find ourselves in. And unfortunately, maybe perhaps, but again, I feel that we're also in a period where new ideas are coming to light, new ways of working out, outside the main currency, things like that. There is a lot of ideas. Do you feel kind of excited for these times in regards to, if we think about it financially, at least, considering the bad state of the financial system, that new things will pop up because of this and new initiatives will be taken? Or do you think that we'll just kind of be more enslaved by it all, Aelous?
Well, what enslaves us is our own habits, our own desires, our own identities. So I'm not too concerned about the kind of mass enslavement programs that we see going on in the world, because I very much see this in a sense as a positive step in the way that World War II was potentially a positive process of, again, awakening of the shadow. It allows us to see the true nature of our chains, of our darkness, of our distortion, when these things actually become realized at a physical level. And so I do see this potentially as a positive thing, that more and more people are becoming aware of the world in which we live. I see that that mankind has been enslaved for many thousands of years at a subtler metaphysical level. And so what we're experiencing now as a species, in a sense, it's like we're owning up to this reality now. But of course, you could also see it as that it's reaching its final phase, where it's actually becoming, the machinery is going to be in place for everyone to see, and it will actually come down to whether you take the implant or whether you don't. This is the narrative that we've created. But I think, and so anyone who is not able to take that narrative and take responsibility for the situation that we've landed in is going to wind up enslaved But then we're already enslaved. That's the thing. And this actually is a possibility, an opportunity, I think, for us to become free, is to actually be able to see the nature of our enslavement. That gives us the challenge. But it's a very tricky thing, because if we see it as an external thing, as this nefarious demonic plot, then we're going to resist it, and resistance makes stronger.
Yes.
We're going to fight it, and then we're going to give our energy to it. And this is exactly what, I don't want to say what they want, because the point I'm trying to make is there isn't really a they, but this is exactly what's kept us enslaved for this long, is this refusal to simply open to and embrace our own shadow, and take responsibility for the situation. And then it can actually transform, then it can begin to transform. I think this is getting very close to the quick of the problem I have, if I can use that phrase, with the whole conspiracy community and the whole the memes and the narratives are being created, is that they are basically negative. And I don't mean that in the sense, oh, they're dark. Of course they have to be dark.
Mm-hmm.
That's also my point, that there's an awful lot of darkness and distortion, an unimaginable amount that we haven't owned up to, and that has to be acknowledged and dealt with. Yeah. So I don't mean that, but what I mean is that it's being framed in such a way that our response to it has to be negative. It's feeding us all of these different ideas and realities and agendas that we are then supposed to say no to. We're supposed to resist, fight the New World Order, overcome the enemy. And so it's actually creating in us this state of resistance and defiance, which is the inverse, I think, of the energy that we actually need to tune into now as a species, which is the energy of surrender, the energy of opening to life and everything, whatever it is, because it's all part of the same thing. And we can't, we've seen now that we can't overcome evil by fighting it and resisting it.
I'm thinking of something I've heard actually many people talk about, and that's the idea of send George Bush and the rest of the boys some love because they need it the most. And that's something that I've heard for a long time. And in one sense, I understand it. Absolutely. In that sense, it's about if George W. Bush represents this kind of unconscious force in ourselves, or that, as Paul Levy elaborates on, that we kind of collectively have placed him up there as an archetype for everyone to project either their admiration or hate for, or whatever it might be. The only way to kind of deal with that is to integrate him or what he represents in that sense. So we need to identify it in ourselves and show it some love instead of trying to push it further away. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. I would see that these so-called malevolent agents and agencies, these are disowned fragments of the collective psyche, which have become autonomous, and so they've become they're going counter to the flow. It's like the Lucifer myth, the rebellion. They'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Yes.
So if we see these agencies and these agendas as these aspects of the collective psyche that have become disowned, rejected, and thereby unruly, uncontrollable, they're like children. They're like very spoiled, very deformed or distorted children who are just behaving in these hideous, aberrational ways. And yeah, they need a child needs love and discipline. It's
right.
Not just this new age thing of loving your enemy. What's it in the Bible? Love your enemy because it will be as hot coals upon his head. That's the thing. That's the one thing that the demon or the demonic element, let's say, it can't resist, you see, because I don't want to get cheesy here with the power of love, but it's the universal energy of acceptance and of surrender. And I think a key is really, and this does relate to the agendas that many of your guests talk about, is that the demonic element, let's say, it can't actually do anything to us as consciousness, which is what we are, And that includes the physical sabotage and all the rest of it. All of that is just a way of trying to hijack or sabotage our consciousness through our DNA, through our bodies. It can't do anything to us, but what it can do is it can cause us to do things to ourselves as a reaction to what we perceive as being done to us.
Yes.
You see what I mean by that? So if we resist and we flinch from the demonic, then we contract and we tighten up and we go into this place of fear and of loathing. And so then we do end up sabotaging our own gnosis and our own harmony, the harmony within ourselves. And so the demonic element thereby has been successful. Whereas if we open to it and totally and manifest love and acceptance towards it, then it becomes utterly powerless.
I'm also wondering, as you're mentioning some of these things here, I'm wondering what it is in us that also perceives a problem as a problem, instead of just an experience or something. Okay, with recognition that this is something I like or this is something that I dislike. I understand that, but when we perceive it as a problem, we begin to struggle with it, and we, again, as you mentioned here many times now, we see it as something externally, and we begin our little fight or dance with it, however we want to look at that. But we don't really just accept this for what it is, and in that sense, if you accept the experience or the problem, that is a kind of what I see, at least, as a kind of an acceptance of it, a type of, this is how you dissolve the problem. This is that, okay, I recognize it's there. I do have issues with it, but I'm going to try not to let it affect me in that way. I'm just going to, try to work with it and maybe even turn it around. See, okay, am I doing something wrong in this situation to bring this problem about? I think that these are the types of things that we need to work with in order to actually solve these things that we perceive as problems. I don't know what you think about ideas like that, Aelous.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a problem, so-called, is only a problem to the local awareness of the identity, which has an idea about the way it wants things to be, and will allow that idea to conflict with what is. It will impose. That's what we do. We have preference. If we want to have a gala party in the garden, then we don't like the fact that it rains. Somewhere else, a farmer is delighted that it's raining because his crops are going to grow. It's just a point of view. If we've decided that we want things to be a certain way, then anything that interferes with that is going to be perceived as a problem.
Yes.
But clearly that's a very egocentric point of view, which is not to say that it's invalid. I mean, we do need to have egos, we do need to perceive things from a particular way, but we don't have to identify with that perception and be restricted to it. Just as if we have a preference for this or that kind of food or whatever, it doesn't mean that that's all we're going to eat. It doesn't mean we're going to be demanding little brats who won't eat up their vegetables. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of a metaphor for how we are as adults. We don't want to eat the Brussels sprouts. We want things on our terms, and we refuse to understand, that this is good for us, kind of thing. Even if we know it's true, we say, well, I don't care, it's good for us because I want things on my terms, I want them my way. And that's, you don't have to be a raving egomaniac to be like that. We are simply all programmed in that way to have a preference and then to forge an allegiance to that preference, so that we will kind of perceive anything that goes against it or that prevents us from having that as a threat, as a problem that needs to be solved. So then life becomes a series of problems. But then if you really look at it, the problem is us, isn't it? The problem is that point of view that simply won't